Imagine this. You wake to a world where every human wears a translucent mask, its surface flickering with colors only others can see. You don't notice yours until the day it cracks. Light seeps through the fractures, and for the first time, you glimpse the truth. Your face has been replaced by a screen. Notifications pulse like phantom limbs, messages scroll where wrinkles should crease, and the eyes staring back are not your own. They belong to a stranger, curated by algorithms, polished by likes. You try to rip the mask off, but its roots burrow into your skull. This is not dystopian fiction. This is the paradox of your existence. You carry a universe in your pocket, yet feel emptier than ever. You've mastered the art of appearing connected while dissolving into static. The great lie of our age whispers, more links, more likes, more life. But when was the last time you felt the weight of another's gaze without a screen between you? When did a silence last longer than 3 seconds without panic? The question isn't why we're addicted. It's why we've stopped questioning the addiction. Why do we mistake the map for the territory, the profile for the person, the echo for the voice? Huxley warned of a society pacified by distraction, but even he couldn't foresee the precision with which we'd engineer our own captivity. We've outsourced memory to clouds, relationships to apps, wonder to influencers. The cost? Your ability to be, not perform, not consume, not react, but to exist, unmediated, in the raw chaos of an uncurated moment. What if the deepest parts of your humanity are withering not from neglect, but from overexposure? What if every ping is a tiny amputation of your attention? Sartre called hell other people. But in this digital purgatory, hell is losing the ability to be alone with yourself. The mask isn't just hiding you, it's replacing you. And the scariest truth? You helped design it. But how did we get here? What ancient hungers did we feed until they became modern chains? You might think this endless hunger for connection is a flaw of modernity, a glitch in the system. But what if it's coded into the very fabric of being human? What if the screen is merely a mirror, reflecting desires as old as consciousness itself? Schopenhauer grasped this truth 2 centuries ago. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. The will, the restless, insatiable engine of desire, drives us toward fulfillment, but condemns us to chase horizons that recede as we approach. Today, the smartphone is the will's perfect accomplice. Every swipe, every refresh, every notification is a hit of dopamine, a temporary salve for the existential itch Schopenhauer called the pain of existence. We scroll not because we're weak, but because we're human. The tragedy? We've outsourced our oldest hunger, the need for meaning, to machines designed to monetize our attention. Jung saw this crisis brewing. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls, he wrote. The shadow, the repressed, unloved parts of ourselves, thrives in silence. But silence is extinct. We flood our minds with noise to drown out the whispers of our unhealed traumas, our unrealized potential. The screen becomes a confessional booth where we seek absolution through curated perfection, mistaking filters for forgiveness. Your endless scrolling isn't a habit. It's a prayer to the god of distraction, a plea to avoid the sacred terror of self-confrontation. Nietzsche's warning echoes here. In solitude, the lonely man devours himself. In crowds, the many devour him. We cling to digital crowds not out of connection, but fear. The herd instinct, the primal urge to belong, has been weaponized. Social media platforms are coliseums where we perform for invisible judges, trading authenticity for approval. To log off is to risk exile, to become the madman Nietzsche described, screaming truths into a world that hears only echoes. Huxley's prophecy crystallizes this paradox. Man's almost infinite appetite for distractions was his blueprint for societal control. But even he underestimated how eagerly we'd build our own cages. The algorithms ruling our feeds aren't just code. They're psychological warfare, exploiting Carl Jung's archetypes and B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning. Infinite scrolls are slot machines for the soul, training us to confuse stimulation for satisfaction. Huxley's soma was a pill. Ours is a feed that numbs by overload, pacifying us with triviality until the weight of real life feels unbearable. Sartre's existentialism sharpens the blade. Hell is other people, he wrote. But the deeper hell is the lie that we can outsource existence itself. Every tweet, every post, every selfie is an attempt to be seen, to affirm we exist. Yet the more we perform, the less we inhabit ourselves. Sartre's bad faith, the surrender of freedom to societal roles, finds its apex in the digital avatar. You curate a self that pleases the crowd, but at what cost? The screen becomes a coffin for your unlived life, buried under layers of likes. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, offered a counter-argument. Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life. But what happens when that search is outsourced to algorithms? We've replaced Frankl's will to meaning with a will to distraction. The void we try to fill, the existential hunger, isn't meant for memes or metrics. It's a sacred ache, a compass pointing toward growth, intimacy, purpose. Yet we silence it with digital cotton candy, marveling at our connectedness as our souls starve. Beneath it all pulses capitalism's iron law. Attention is the new currency. Tech giants harvest your focus like oil, refining it into profit. Schopenhauer's will, Nietzsche's herd, Jung's shadow, they've all been reverse-engineered into apps that hijack your biology. Push notifications are psychological landmines, triggering cortisol spikes and dopamine rushes that keep you in a state of perpetual crisis. You're not weak. You're outgunned. Ancient parts of your brain, the ones that evolved to seek safety in tribes, to hoard resources, to crave novelty, are now exploited by trillion-dollar empires. But here's the secret they don't want you to grasp. This isn't progress, it's regression. We've traded the Socratic dialogue for the comments section, the philosopher's journal for the Instagram story. The great minds of history, Plato, Kierkegaard, Woolf, cultivated depth through stillness. We've replaced their wisdom with a cult of speed, mistaking motion for meaning. The roots of this crisis are not in your phone, but in the unlit corners of your psyche and the unexamined myths of your culture. To disconnect isn't just to power off, it's to revolt against a system that profits from your fragmentation. But what happens when the mask becomes the face, when the noise becomes the self? The consequences are already here, and they're far darker than you think. You don't notice the rot until the foundation collapses. Your brain, once a cathedral of depth, capable of contemplation and creativity, now operates like a caffeinated moth, flitting from pixel to pixel. Studies reveal the average attention span has plummeted to 8 seconds, shorter than a goldfish's. But this isn't just about focus. It's about the slow erosion of your inner world. Neurologists warn that constant connectivity rewires neural pathways, privileging rapid pattern recognition over deep cognition. You're becoming a machine optimized for reaction, not reflection. The cost? Your ability to think beyond the next tweet, to imagine beyond the algorithm's suggestions, to dream outside the hive mind's boundaries. Consider memory. Once a tapestry of sensory details and emotions, it's now a graveyard of screenshots and cloud backups. Researchers at the University of California found that relying on devices to store information reduces our ability to retain it, a phenomenon called digital amnesia. Your life is a museum of thumbnails, experiences flattened to fit Instagram's grid. You no longer live moments, you curate them. The first kiss, the mountain vista, the funeral, all filtered, framed, and filed away. What's lost isn't just data, but the visceral texture of being alive. Heidegger warned that technology doesn't just do things, it changes how we see reality. Your phone isn't a tool, it's a new ontology, a lens that reduces sunsets to shareable content and grief to content warnings, but the rot runs deeper. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt traces the spike in teen depression and anxiety to the 2012 smartphone explosion. Girls who spend 5 hours daily on social media are 3 times more likely to contemplate suicide. The link isn't just screen time, it's the commodification of identity. Your worth is measured in followers, your pain diluted to content. The constant comparison triggers what psychologist Mary Pfeiffer calls cognitive contamination, a toxic blend of perfectionism and self-loathing. You scroll through highlight reels of others' lives while numbing your own unmetabolized pain. The result? A generation fluent in emojis but illiterate in empathy, trained to perform compassion while starving for genuine connection. Culturally, we're fragmenting. Algorithms feed you ideological comfort food, leveraging confirmation bias to keep you addicted to outrage. Social media's architecture, designed to maximize engagement, rewards extremism. Moderate voices drown in the cacophony. Nuance is a liability. The mere exposure effect, a psychological quirk that makes us prefer familiar ideas, calcifies into tribalism. You don't debate, you dunk. You don't listen, you reload. Historian Timothy Snyder grimly notes that the last time humanity faced such epistemic chaos, the 1930s, it ended in camps and propaganda. Today's tools are subtler, but the stakes are the same. A world where truth is negotiable and reality is optional. Even your body rebels. Phantom vibration syndrome, the illusion your phone buzzes, haunts 80% of users. Nomophobia, the fear of being phoneless, triggers cortisol levels akin to PTSD. Sleep, that ancient sanctuary, is shattered by blue light's synthetic sunrise. The circadian rhythm, evolved over millennia, kneels before the infinite scroll. You're a circadian zombie, shuffling through days in a haze of exhaustion, mistaking exhaustion for productivity. But the most insidious consequence? The death of boredom. That vast, fertile emptiness where creativity sparks and the self whispers its secrets. Nietzsche wrote that boredom is the womb of great ideas, but we've plugged the void with TikTok dances and podcast chatter. The constant drip feed of stimuli starves the brain's default mode network, the neural circuit responsible for introspection, identity, and meaning-making. Without boredom, there's no fermentation of the soul. You become a passenger in your own life, outsourcing your inner monologue to influencers and hot takes. Worst of all, you've begun to enjoy the chains. Dopamine loops condition you to crave the numbness. The same neural pathways that once sought food and shelter now fire for retweets and streaks. Addiction isn't a bug in the system, it's the system. Psychologist Anna Lembke describes this as the dopamine deficit cycle. The more you consume, the more you need to feel alive. Reality pales next to the technicolor rush of the feed. Offline, the world feels desaturated, a draft version of life. You return to the screen not out of desire, but because you've forgotten how to want anything else. This isn't just personal, it's planetary. The climate activists scrolling guiltily about wildfires while ordering fast fashion on Amazon. The CEO hosting mindfulness webinars while employees burn out on Slack. A society that venerates awareness yet remains paralyzed, drowning in information but bereft of wisdom. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls this the burnout society. We're not oppressed by external forces, but by our own compulsion to optimize, perform, and consume. The enemy isn't Big Brother, it's the little brother in your pocket, cheering you on as you dig your own grave. And yet, the greatest tragedy remains invisible. You're losing your capacity to wonder, to stand beneath a starry sky and feel awe, not the itch to photograph it. To love someone without mentally drafting the caption. To grieve without metrics. Huxley feared we'd drown in irrelevance, but irrelevance is now our refuge. We've traded the sublime for the submenu, mystery for metadata. The mask has fused to your skin. The screen has become your nervous system. But somewhere beneath the static, a primal signal pulses, a reminder of what you were before the world plugged in. The question is no longer how we got here. It's whether there's still time to tear the wires out. The screen is not your master, it's your mirror. To break its hold, you must first shatter the illusion that this is a battle of willpower. You cannot discipline your way out of a system engineered to exploit your biology. The answer lies not in deleting apps or buying a flip phone, but in rediscovering what it means to be sovereign in a world that trades your humanity for bandwidth. History's greatest rebels didn't fight systems, they rewired minds. Consider the Amish. While society mocks their rejection of technology, they wield a radical philosophy. Tools are adopted only if they strengthen community. The Amish ask, does this serve life? A question we've forgotten to ask. Their rebellion isn't against progress, but against the tyranny of the unexamined upgrade. You don't need to abandon your phone. You need to become Amish in spirit. Curate tools that deepen, not diminish your capacity to feel alive. Nietzsche's Übermensch, the Overman, offers a blueprint. He urged individuals to create their own values, to become who you are beyond societal conditioning. Apply this to connectivity. What rituals, relationships, or ideas matter so deeply that you'd guard them with monastic devotion? A 2018 MIT study found that workers who designated sacred hours for deep focus, no emails, no alerts, reported triple the creative output and emotional clarity. The key isn't austerity, it's intentionality. Treat attention as a sacred space. Let nothing enter uninvited. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy echoes here. In Auschwitz, he realized that even in unimaginable suffering, meaning could not be taken, only surrendered. Your digital camps are different, but the principle remains. You retain the power to choose your response. Start by injecting friction. Writer Cal Newport deletes social media apps every Sunday, forcing himself to manually reinstall them each week. The momentary pause, the space between impulse and action, is where freedom reignites. But true rebellion demands more than personal fixes. It requires collective defiance. In the 19th century, Luddites smashed machines not because they feared progress, but because factories dehumanized labor. Today's Luddites are artists like Billie Eilish, who filmed a music video entirely on vintage camcorders to protest digital perfectionism, or authors like Jenny Odell, who preach the radical act of doing nothing. These acts are not rejections of technology, they're reclamations of texture, imperfection, and slowness. The most subversive tool? Boredom. Neuroscientist Andrew Smart argues that idle time activates the brain's default network, the wellspring of creativity and self-awareness. In 1665, Isaac Newton quarantined during the Great Plague. No colleagues, no parties, no distractions. That year of isolation birthed calculus, the laws of motion, and optics. Imagine your greatest ideas are waiting in the emptiness you've been numbing with Netflix. Schedule boredom appointments. Sit in a chair for 20 minutes with no phone, no stimuli. Let the mind wander. At first it will feel like withdrawal. That's the addiction dying. Philosophically, this rebellion mirrors Socrates' defiance in the Apology. He refused to stop questioning Athenian norms, even when sentenced to death. His weapon? The examined life. Apply this to your digital existence. Audit every app, every notification, every habit. Ask, does this help me love, create, or transcend? Or does it keep me small? Delete not out of guilt, but out of reverence for your unlived potential. Capitalism will resist you. Tech giants spend billions to keep you compliant. But remember, you are the last common ancestor between two futures. In one, humanity becomes a hive mind of distracted consumers. In the other, we evolve into a species that wields technology without worshiping it. Start small. Delete one app. Spend a morning offline. Write a letter instead of a text. Each act is a pebble thrown at Goliath's forehead. The goal isn't purity, it's renegotiation. To quote media theorist Marshall McLuhan, there is no inevitability as long as there is a willingness to contemplate what is happening. Your rebellion begins the moment you realize connectivity is not the problem. Surrender is. The mask was never the enemy. It was the teacher. Peel it off and you'll find no monstrous void beneath, only raw, unfiltered being. The screen didn't steal your soul. It revealed how easily you'd trade it for a simulacrum of belonging. The ultimate truth is this: you were never disconnected from reality. You were disconnected from yourself. For decades, we've framed technology as the antagonist, an external force corrupting our humanity. But the screen merely amplified what was already fractured within. Jung's shadow, Nietzsche's abyss, Frankel's existential vacuum. These are not flaws to cure, but compasses to heed. The infinite scroll didn't create your restlessness. It exploited it. Your hunger for meaning was never meant to be satisfied by pixels. It's a fire, lit millennia ago, urging you to chase sunsets, not selfies, to seek awe, not algorithms. Huxley's nightmare wasn't about screens, it was about sedation. Sartre's hell wasn't other people, it was believing you needed their validation to exist. The rebellion isn't against your phone, but against the lie that you are incomplete without it. Here's the paradigm shift. Presence is the last frontier of human freedom. Not mindfulness apps or productivity hacks, but the savage, unmarketable act of inhabiting your life without curation. To stand in a crowded room and feel loneliness dissolve because you're finally here. To touch a lover's hand and sense the universe in their fingerprints. To weep without filming it, laugh without hashtagging it, exist without proving it. The ancients knew this truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote of it in the Meditations. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. But we've paved over that retreat with notifications, convinced the answer lay in more. More followers, more updates, more noise. The answer was always less. When you power down the screen, you don't find silence. You meet the voice you've been drowning out. The one that knows how to grieve, create, and love without metrics. This is your birthright, to exist as a verb, not a brand, a question, not a profile. The digital age will not end, but your complicity can. The final choice is brutal and beautiful. Plug back into the feed or become the signal.